The wind whipped across the snowy plains of Arcturus Prime as Commander Albrecht watched his men dotted across the wide expanse as they slipped anti-tank mines beneath the snow. The Arcturian Kodiaks knew their work well. This was a rare passable piece of land on their otherwise mountainous planet, and it was likely that the enemy would move through here. They would need to move quickly and help coordinate the evacuation of the Promethium drills of Simus. The Promethium lake below the surface had been sucked dry, and Albrecht needed to buy some time for the men and material to return to Ursus Station. With perfect timing, as each group of men finished setting their mines, chimeras arrived to collect them and ferry them to the next rendezvous point, following narrow mountain roads. Albrecht understood the nature of this war. If one could understand the planet of Arcturus herself, they could turn her into a weapon against their enemies. The traitors who invaded were arrogant. They assumed that mere humans would break before their terrifying might. However, they underestimated the planet, and they could not take the time to learn about her before they decided to wage war. Albrecht stood at the end of the line of the sappers as they finished laying the last of their mines. He quickly climbed atop the final transport. It was much colder being exposed to the elements like this, but he needed to know how close the enemy was, and would give updates to his lieutenants. Albrecht pulled out his magnoculars and scanned the snowy lines of mountains for movement. As the chimera trundled along the road, Albrecht could see movement just over the ridge. Cultists. The coward traitors decided to send their fodder first. For all their skill and hellish prowess, the traitor Astartes lost much of their advantage on Arcturus. Bad weather and terrain made it difficult to execute lightning raids, and the narrow passes and roads made ambushes easy. In some places, the air was too thin for winged aircraft to fly. The traitor Astartes had a difficult choice. Either they braved the treacherous peaks themselves, or they slowed themselves further by driving a cult horde before them. They had chosen the latter. The horde was forced through the narrow passages. Among them were a few stolen Astra Militarum tanks and transports. Albrecht watched the rabble surge forward into the broad plain where the mines had been set. They lingered for a moment before pressing forward. It was likely they were looking for the best path forward over the mountains towards the Simus mines. Then they were spotted. A cry went up from the gathered horde as the sound of stubbers and autoguns could be heard echoing through the valley. A few rockets were fired from heavy weapons teams as their tanks wheeled into position to fire. The wind sent them wildly off course, missing Albrecht's chimera by a few dozen meters. Albrecht needed to make a final turn before they'd be out of range as they hatched back and forth across the mountain. Soon they'd be able to set up their ambush point outside of Simus. He turned on his voxcaster and gave his final orders. "This mine needs another 12 hours to remove its remaining miners and heavy equipment. Establish ambush point at Arcturus Valley. Utilize Maritimus pattern crossfire points. Let's see how well they fight bears in their own den." A chorus of "For Ursus!" could be heard over the Vox channel. It was at this moment that the traitor horde advanced a little too eagerly and a little too far. Huge blasts shook the valley as the anti-tank mines detonated, and the traitors streamed across the plains. Soot and blood soon stained the pure white snow, and the tremendous blast shook the valley, and the deep snow near the peak shifted. Albrecht frantically pounded on the gunner's hatch. The shifting snows cascaded until they built up into a careening avalanche, tearing down towards the valley below. Most of the column were out of danger's way, but Albrecht's transport and another chimera were going to be caught. The hatch opened and Commander Albrecht dove inside, closing the hatch behind him. He was just in time as the avalanche smashed into the transport before continuing down to the Chaos Horde below. A wounded bear is still dangerous. Come, men of Arcturus. We will show them the endurance and the will of the Kodiaks.